Make it look like we're fleeing. The ship twisted again, weaving through the asteroid maze with precision that bordered on artistry, the engines humming a low protest. A smaller rock shattered under the aliens' secondary fire, debris blooming, like a silent flower in the vacuum, shards expanding in a deadly cloud. One chunk clipped the Vanguard's wing, sending a jolt through the deck that rattled loose tools and made the lights flicker momentarily. Minor breach in Cargo Bay 3, Jax reported, his fingers already dancing across the controls to seal it remotely. Bulkhead sliding shut with a hydraulic hiss. Lost a drill drone, but we're intact. Systems holding. Elena watched the lead alien ship close the gap, its silhouette cutting through the starfield with relentless purpose, a hunter scenting blood. Her heart thudded with the engine's rhythm, a defiant drumbeat echoing her resolve. They weren't just miners anymore, toiling for resources in the black. This was Earth's line in the void, drawn in hull plating and human will. The improvised laser hummed to life, a low growl building in the ship's bones, vibrating through the deck like the purr of an awakening beast. "Target locked," Jack said, his voice laced with grim excitement, the thrill of the hack overriding the fear. "Fire," Elena ordered, her command crisp and final. The beam lanced out, a brilliant thread of coherent light that struck true, piercing the alien's defenses with surgical precision. The alien vessel shuddered violently, its engines flaring erratically as exotic particles destabilized in a cascade reaction. The hull glowing with internal fires that no atmosphere could sustain. It veered off course, slamming into an asteroid, with a distant soundless crunch that registered only as a tremor on the sensors. Shrapnel spiraled away into the dark, a temporary victory in the endless black, the debris field now littered with the remnants of their first kill. But the other two ships adjusted swiftly, their formations tightening like a noose, weapons ports glowing with building energy. The hunt was far from over, and the void seemed to close in around them, indifferent to their fragile defiance. Elena gripped the armrests again, her knuckles whitening as the view screen flickered with incoming data streams. The holographic display, updating in real time with threat vectors and shield statuses. The two remaining alien ships loomed larger now, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian under the distant sun's glare, the energy veins pulsing with an almost organic rhythm that hinted at tech far beyond human understanding. Jax wiped sweat from his brow once more, his fingers dancing over the console to recalibrate the jury-rigged laser, rerouting power from non-essential systems to keep it viable. "They're adapting," he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "Shields up, patterns shifting. Damn, they're fast learners. Our initial scan showed modular defenses. They're reconfiguring on the fly." "Options?" Elena snapped, her eyes fixed on the tactical overlay that projected the battlefield in glowing lines. Asteroids marked as potential shields or hazards. The bridge hummed with the low whine of straining systems, every panel lit in urgent red, the air growing warmer from the redistributed heat sinks. Mira Chen, now crammed into the co-pilot's seat to assist with auxiliary controls, leaned forward, her braid swinging like a pendulum as she reviewed the engineering feeds. "We can't take them head-on. That laser's got one more good shot, maybe. But if we divert power from life support..." She trailed off, glancing at the crew readout on her secondary screen, vitals ticking steadily but oxygen recyclers already laboring. Thomas in the engine room was already pushing the core to its limits, his comms crackling with terse updates. "Power at 95%, Captain. Holding, but don't ask for more miracles." No choice, Elena thought, the reality settling like lead in her stomach. She punched the intercom button, her finger jabbing with emphasis. "Tomas, throttle back non-essentials. We're going evasive." The ship lurched as thrusters fired in sequence, banking hard into the asteroid field's edge, the viewport filling with the tumbling chaos of rock and dust. Debris pinged off the hull like erratic hail, a metallic symphony underscoring the tension, each impact a reminder of how thin the margin for error was. The lead alien vessel fired first, a shimmering pulse of gravitic energy that grazed there, portside, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of sparks that showered the bridge like metallic rain. Alarms blared anew, a cacophony that Jack silenced with a swift override, his curses lost in the noise. Hull integrity at 70%. We're venting atmosphere in Bay 3, he reported, his voice rising to be heard over the wail. Seal it, Elena ordered, her mind racing through the debris map projected on her personal display. A mental overlay of trajectories and weak points. The field's dense here. A graveyard of shattered rock from some ancient collision billions of years ago. Remnants of planetary birth pangs now turned to tactical assets. If they could use it. Mira, plot a slingshot path. Hug the big cluster at bearing 240. Jax, charge the laser but hold. Make them think we're desperate, drawing them in. Mira's hands flew across her pad, projecting a holographic trajectory that snaked through the rocks like a serpent evading hunters, the path a razor-thin line between survival and annihilation. It's tight. One wrong nudge and we're pulverized, scattered across the belt like confetti. But her tone held that spark of defiance, the same grit that had kept them alive through the initial invasion probes, when the aliens first appeared as blips on long-range scopes. The ship dove, engines roaring as it threaded the needle between tumbling boulders, the hull groaning under the G-forces, rivets protesting the strain. The aliens pursued, their formations breaking slightly to avoid the chaos of the field, but closing the distance with calculated aggression. Elena watched the distance close on the second ship, its weapons ports glowing with building energy, a harbinger of the storm to come. Almost in position, Jax reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his upper lip. The lasers, capacitors humming louder now, drawing power like a thirsting engine. They're splitting, one's flanking, Mira added, her eyes flicking between screens. Let it, Elena said, feeling the vibration through the deck plating, the ship's bones protesting the maneuver, but holding true. In the void silence, every decision echoed like a shout, amplified by the isolation. The flanking ship unleashed a barrage, energy bolts streaking past like vengeful stars, painting the darkness with lethal light. One clipped the aft stabilizer, and the Vanguard spun wildly, inertial dampeners straining to compensate. The crew thrown against their harnesses with bone-jarring force. Mira whooped as she wrestled the controls, yanking them back on course with a series of microbursts. Got it, but we're limping now, thrusters at 60%. Thomas's voice burst over the comm, laced with exhaustion but unbowed. Engines at max, rerouting coolant from the laser. You've got your shot, but make it count. Core's redlining. Elena nodded, though no one could see it through the tension. On my mark. The view screen filled with the lead ship's silhouette, now exposed as it rounded the asteroid cluster too aggressively, overcommitting in its pursuit. Jax's fingers hovered over the trigger, the moment suspended. Fire! The laser erupted again, a searing lance that punched through the enemy's shield like paper, the beam coring into the drive section with devastating effect. The alien craft, bucked like a wounded animal, flames, impossible in vacuum but plasma venting in brilliant azure, erupting from its core, the exotic matter destabilizing in a chain reaction. It tumbled end over end, trailing debris that sparked against the rocks in silent pyres. But the flanking ship was closing fast, its weapons locked on with unerring precision, the targeting ping echoing through the sensors. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Evasive pattern Delta, now! The Vanguard twisted in a corkscrew, scraping hull against a passing asteroid, the screech of metal on rock transmitted through the structure like a banshee's wail. Make it look like we're fleeing. The ship twisted again, weaving through the asteroid maze with precision that bordered on artistry, the engines humming a low protest. A smaller rock shattered under the aliens' secondary fire, debris blooming, like a silent flower in the vacuum, shards expanding in a deadly cloud. One chunk clipped the Vanguard's wing, sending a jolt through the deck that rattled loose tools and made the lights flicker momentarily. Minor breach in Cargo Bay 3, Jax reported, his fingers already dancing across the controls to seal it remotely. Bulkhead sliding shut with a hydraulic hiss. Lost a drill drone, but we're intact. Systems holding. Elena watched the lead alien ship close the gap, its silhouette cutting through the starfield with relentless purpose, a hunter scenting blood. Her heart thudded with the engine's rhythm. a defiant drumbeat echoing her resolve. They weren't just miners anymore, toiling for resources in the black. This was Earth's line in the void, drawn in hull plating and human will. The improvised laser hummed to life, a low growl building in the ship's bones, vibrating through the deck like the purr of an awakening beast. "Target locked," Jack said, his voice laced with grim excitement, the thrill of the hack overriding the fear. "Fire," Elena ordered, her command crisp and final. The beam lanced out, a brilliant thread of coherent light that struck true, piercing the alien's defenses with surgical precision. The alien vessel shuddered violently, its engines flaring erratically as exotic particles destabilized in a cascade reaction. The hull glowing with internal fires that no atmosphere could sustain. It veered off course, slamming into an asteroid, with a distant soundless crunch that registered only as a tremor on the sensors. Shrapnel spiraled away into the dark, a temporary victory in the endless black, the debris field now littered with the remnants of their first kill. But the other two ships adjusted swiftly, their formations tightening like a noose, weapons ports glowing with building energy. The hunt was far from over, and the void seemed to close in around them, indifferent to their fragile defiance. Elena gripped the armrests again, her knuckles whitening as the view screen flickered with incoming data streams. The holographic display, updating in real time with threat vectors and shield statuses. The two remaining alien ships loomed larger now, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian under the distant sun's glare, the energy veins pulsing with an almost organic rhythm that hinted at tech far beyond human understanding. Jax wiped sweat from his brow once more, his fingers dancing over the console to recalibrate the jury-rigged laser, rerouting power from non-essential systems to keep it viable. "They're adapting," he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "Shields up, patterns shifting. Damn, they're fast learners. Our initial scan showed modular defenses. They're reconfiguring on the fly." "Options?" Elena snapped, her eyes fixed on the tactical overlay that projected the battlefield in glowing lines. Asteroids marked as potential shields or hazards. The bridge hummed with the low whine of straining systems, every panel lit in urgent red, the air growing warmer from the redistributed heat sinks. Mira Chen, now crammed into the co-pilot's seat to assist with auxiliary controls, leaned forward, her braid swinging like a pendulum as she reviewed the engineering feeds. "We can't take them head-on. That laser's got one more good shot, maybe. But if we divert power from life support..." She trailed off, glancing at the crew readout on her secondary screen, vitals ticking steadily but oxygen recyclers already laboring. Thomas in the engine room was already pushing the core to its limits, his comms crackling with terse updates. "Power at 95%, Captain. Holding, but don't ask for more miracles." No choice, Elena thought, the reality settling like lead in her stomach. She punched the intercom button, her finger jabbing with emphasis. "Tomas, throttle back non-essentials. We're going evasive." The ship lurched as thrusters fired in sequence, banking hard into the asteroid field's edge, the viewport filling with the tumbling chaos of rock and dust. Debris pinged off the hull like erratic hail, a metallic symphony underscoring the tension, each impact a reminder of how thin the margin for error was. The lead alien vessel fired first, a shimmering pulse of gravitic energy that grazed there, portside, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of sparks that showered the bridge like metallic rain. Alarms blared anew, a cacophony that Jack silenced with a swift override, his curses lost in the noise. "Hull integrity at 70%. We're venting atmosphere in Bay 3, he reported, his voice rising to be heard over the wail. "Seal it," Elena ordered, her mind racing through the debris map projected on her personal display, a mental overlay of trajectories and weak points. The field's dense here, a graveyard of shattered rock from some ancient collision billions of years ago. Remnants of planetary birth pangs now turned to tactical assets. If they could use it. "Mira, plot a slingshot path. Hug the big cluster at bearing 240. Jax, charge the laser, but hold. Make them think we're desperate, drawing them in." Mira's hands flew across her pad, projecting a holographic trajectory that snaked through the rocks like a serpent evading hunters, the path a razor-thin line between survival and annihilation. It's tight. One wrong nudge and we're pulverized, scattered across the belt like confetti. But her tone held that spark of defiance, the same grit that had kept them alive through the initial invasion probes, when the aliens first appeared as blips on long-range scopes. The ship dove, engines roaring as it threaded the needle between tumbling boulders, the hull groaning under the G-forces, rivets protesting the strain. The aliens pursued, their formations breaking slightly to avoid the chaos of the field, but closing the distance with calculated aggression. Elena watched the distance close on the second ship, its weapons ports glowing with building energy, a harbinger of the storm to come. Almost in position, Jax reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his upper lip. The lasers, capacitors humming louder now, drawing power like a thirsting engine. They're splitting, one's flanking, Mira added, her eyes flicking between screens. Let it, Elena said, feeling the vibration through the deck plating, the ship's bones protesting the maneuver, but holding true. In the void silence, every decision echoed like a shout, amplified by the isolation. The flanking ship unleashed a barrage, energy bolts streaking past like vengeful stars, painting the darkness with lethal light. One clipped the aft stabilizer, and the Vanguard spun wildly, inertial dampeners straining to compensate, the crew thrown against their harnesses with bone-jarring force. Mira whooped as she wrestled the controls, yanking them back on course with a series of microbursts. Got it, but we're limping now, thrusters at 60%. Thomas's voice burst over the comm, laced with exhaustion but unbowed. Engines at max, rerouting coolant from the laser. You've got your shot, but make it count. Core's redlining. Elena nodded, though no one could see it through the tension. On my mark. The view screen filled with the lead ship's silhouette, now exposed as it rounded the asteroid cluster too aggressively, overcommitting in its pursuit. Jax's fingers hovered over the trigger, the moment suspended. Fire! The laser erupted again, a searing lance that punched through the enemy's shield like paper, the beam coring into the drive section with devastating effect. The alien craft, bucked like a wounded animal, flames, impossible in vacuum but plasma venting in brilliant azure, erupting from its core, the exotic matter destabilizing in a chain reaction. It tumbled end over end, trailing debris that sparked against the rocks in silent pyres. But the flanking ship was closing fast, its weapons locked on with unerring precision, the targeting ping echoing through the sensors. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Evasive pattern Delta, now! The Vanguard twisted in a corkscrew, scraping hull against a passing asteroid, the screech of metal on rock transmitted through the structure like a banshee's wail. The pursuing ship's shot went wide, detonating a boulder into an expanding cloud of shrapnel that blossomed outward. Fragments hammered their shields, dropping integrity to critical levels, the energy barriers flickering like a candle in wind. They're not backing off, Jack said, reloading the laser's capacitors with frantic efficiency, his hands a blur. One more hit and we're done, Captain. Shields at 35%. Mira glanced at Elena, her eyes fierce with the fire of survival. We improvise. Use the debris field against them. Detonate a rock right in their path. Elena saw it instantly. The math clicked in her head, human stubbornness turning desperation into strategy, leveraging the environment as a weapon. Tomas, can we pulse the engines to trigger a micro-collapse? Affirmative, came the reply, laced with exhaustion but steady. But it'll fry the relays. No more jumps after this. We're committed to sublight. Do it. Elena strapped in tighter as the ship accelerated into the heart of the field, the engines building to a crescendo. The final alien ship matched them, relentless in its pursuit, a shadow that refused to fade. The pulse fired, a directed burst from the engines vibrating through a weak asteroid with pinpoint accuracy. It shattered spectacularly, a wave of razor-sharp fragments surging toward the pursuer like a tidal wave in stone. The alien vessel tried to evade, thrusters flaring, but it was too late. The debris storm engulfed it, tearing gashes in its hull. Sensors registering multiple breaches, it exploded in a silent bloom of light, wreckage scattering like confetti in the black, the flash illuminating the belt for a brief, triumphant moment. The bridge fell quiet, save for the ping of cooling systems and the distant hum of repairs auto-initiating. Jax exhaled sharply, slumping back in his chair, the tension draining from his shoulders. 2 down. But we're blind in one sector and engines are toast. Sublight only from here. Elena unstrapped, standing on legs that felt like lead, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. The stars outside seemed colder now, the victory hollow with the cost, the ship battered, the crew weary but unbroken. One ship left in the alien fleet, somewhere out there in the encroaching dark, and their own vessel barely spaceworthy, limping but defiant. They pressed on, the void swallowing their fragile defiance, but the fire in their veins burned brighter. Jax wiped sweat from his brow, the acrid tang of scorched circuits filling the bridge like a bad omen, mingling with the metallic bite of ozone from overloaded panels. The console before him flickered erratically, red warnings pulsing across the damaged nav display, each alert a reminder of the toll the battle had exacted. Elena, reroute auxiliary power to the forward arrays. We can't afford another blind spot, he said, his voice rough from shouting orders but steady as he prioritized systems. She nodded, her fingers flying over her panel with the efficiency of long practice, but her jaw tightened in frustration. It's not enough, Jax. Hull integrity's at 40%. One more hit like that and we're venting atmosphere across the board. Her voice carried the weight of too many close calls, steady but edged with the fatigue they all shared, the kind that settled into bones after hours of unrelenting stress. Mira, strapped into the engineering station 2 seats over, let out a low curse, her wiry frame tense as she monitored the flows. She was the one always quick with a tool or a quip, her hands grease-streaked even now from an earlier patch job. Engines are limping, Captain. That burst we fired? It was the last of the reserves. We're running on fumes and prayers, core temperature climbing. The void outside the viewport stretched endless, stars mocking their battered state with their indifferent sparkle. The alien fleet, or what was left of it, had come for Earth's mineral veins, stripping colonies like locusts before humanity could blink, leaving behind scarred worlds and desperate refugees. But Jax's crew, the ragtag survivors of the UNS Vanguard, had turned the tables twice now, proving the briefings back home. Ingenuity over firepower. Prove it or die, that was the unspoken creed. A proximity alert blared, sharp and insistent, slicing through the momentary lull like a fresh wound. Elena's eyes widened, snapping to the scanner. Contact! Bearing 047, closing fast. It's the last one. Bigger than the others. Shields modulating to counter our signatures. Jax gripped the armrests, his mind racing through options that dwindled by the second, each one riskier than the last. The alien ship loomed on the secondary screen, a sleek predator with tendrils of energy crackling along its flanks, the design evoking something biomechanical, alive in its malice. No time for finesse. Survival demanded boldness. Mira, can we spoof their sensors? Make us look like debris in the field? She hesitated, chewing her lip as she ran simulations in her head. Maybe. If I jury-rigged the ECM with the waste recyclers, it'd overload half the systems, but it might buy us a ghost run through the belt. Her fingers paused on the controls, doubt flickering in her eyes. The last improv had cost them the secondary thrusters, leaving them unbalanced. Do it, Jax said, his voice firm, brooking no argument. No room for second-guessing in the black. Elena shot him a glance, her cautious nature warring with the fire in her gut. She was the planner, the one who mapped escape vectors while others panicked, her mind a chessboard of possibilities. I'll plot a slingshot around that gas giant on the belt's edge. If we play dead long enough, we can loop back and hit their flank. The ship shuddered as the alien vessel fired a probing shot, the beam grazing their weakened shields in a shower of sparks that danced across the hull plating. Alarms wailed in response, a symphony of warning. Jax felt the deck tilt slightly, gravity compensators straining to maintain equilibrium. Now, Mira, light it up. Mira slammed the override and a haze of false echoes bloomed from their hull, spectral signatures mimicking a debris field, ghosts in the machine designed to confuse. The alien ship veered sharply, its weapons sweeping empty space, scanning for the phantom targets. For a heartbeat, silence reigned on the bridge, broken only by heavy breaths and the soft beep of stabilizing systems. But the ploy held only seconds. The enemy recalibrated with ruthless precision its AI or whatever passed for it, learning from the deception. Another volley struck true, ripping through the port side with a force that buckled inner frames. Lights dimmed across the bridge. A panel exploded in a cascade of flames, acrid smoke billowing. Mira dove for the extinguisher, yelling over the din as she sprayed foam. "We lost the recycler!" It's feeding back into the core, power surges everywhere. Elena unbuckled in a flash, grabbing a fire suppressor from the wall mount and joining the effort. Her movements fluid despite the chaos. Jack's evasive. Full burn on what's left. He punched the controls. The Vanguard lurching into a desperate spiral. The gas giant swelling on the viewport like a swirling eye. Its storms a gamble, sanctuary or grave depending on the angles. The alien pursued relentless, its hull gleaming with unholy efficiency, cutting through the debris with ease. In the chaos, Jack spotted it. A faint ion trail from their earlier fight, debris still orbiting the giant's magnetosphere, a lingering hazard from the first kill. Elena, adjust course. Use their own trash against them. Draw them into the trail. She understood instantly, her fingers adjusting the vector with precision. But as they dove into the turbulent edge of the atmosphere, the engine screamed, redlining toward failure. Heat shields glowing under the friction. Mira patched in from below decks, her voice crackling over comms amid the roar. Holding. Barely. One more twist and we shear apart at the seams. The debris field thickened as they plunged deeper, chunks of its fallen kin slamming into the alien's shields with kinetic fury. A lucky fragment pierced the glow of its energy barriers, venting plasma in a spectacular jet. It faltered, buying them precious minutes as it corrected course. They skimmed the giant's upper atmosphere, heat shields glowing cherry red. The crew braced against the G-forces that pressed them into their seats like an invisible hand. Jax's vision blurred at the edges, but he held the stick firm, guiding them through the maelstrom. Victory wasn't clean. It never was in space combat, where every win came etched with scars. As they pulled away, trailing smoke from minor vents, the alien wreckage lit the void behind them. 3 down now, but the cost etched deep into the Vanguard's frame. Their ship was a dying beast, limping toward Earth with secrets the invaders would never claim. The salvaged data from the wrecks a potential game-changer if they could deliver it. Jax gripped the controls tighter as the console alarms blared, a relentless wail cutting through the dim hum of the bridge. The lights dimmed to emergency levels to conserve power. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, patches of emergency sealant bubbling where micrometeors had nicked them during the frantic escape. Tiny breaches sealed but threatening to reopen. Status on the core? He barked, his eyes fixed on the flickering nav screen, plotting the long haul back to Earth. Mira's response came sharp over the intercom, her voice laced with the grit of someone who'd patched more hull breaches than she cared to count, her hands likely already deep in the access panels below. Core's stable, but the injectors are fried. We're leaking coolant like a sieve. If we don't vent the excess soon, we'll cook from the inside out. Temperatures rising across all decks. He nodded to himself, fingers dancing across the controls to reroute power from secondary systems, prioritizing propulsion over comfort. Below decks, Lena, the quiet engineer with a knack for jury-rigging miracles from scrap, would be elbow-deep in the mess already, her steady hands working by the light of a headlamp. Jax trusted her not to panic. She'd been the one who'd spotted the alien ship's weak shield harmonics back in the debris field, turning observation into opportunity. But trust didn't quiet the knot in his gut, the gnawing awareness of how close they teetered on the edge. Earth loomed large on the long-range scanners, a blue marble taunting them with safety that felt 1,000,000 kilometers away. Its defense platforms a distant promise. A shudder rippled through the frame and red lights pulsed across the panels in warning. Incoming hail. The AI chimed in, its synthetic tone flat against the chaos, a calm voice in the storm. Jax's jaw tightened, steeling himself. Not the aliens again. Not this close to home, where the stakes rose exponentially. Patch it through, he said, leaning forward in his chair. The view screen crackled to life, resolving into the stern face of Admiral Reyes from Lunar Command. Her uniform crisp and immaculate, but the lines around her eyes spoke of sleepless nights since the first alien sightings disrupted the fragile peace of the outer systems. Captain Harlan, she began, no time for pleasantries or protocol in the face of crisis. Your transmission from the outer belt cut out midstream. Report. Jax exhaled slowly, the weight of the mission pressing down like the gravity they lacked. We hit their Vanguard hard, ma'am. 3 cruisers down, but they adapted fast, learning from every exchange. Our drive took a beating. We're at 40% efficiency. and the alien tech we salvaged is glitching, interfering with our systems. Schematics show their weapons draw from some kind of exotic matter core. If they breach atmosphere, Earth's defenses won't hold against that power. Reyes's gaze hardened, her eyes scanning the feed from his bridge cam, taking in the smoke wisping from a console behind him, the flickering lights, the evident wear on the crew. Casualties? None dead. But Doc's arm is mangled from a console explosion during the last volley.
Lena's holding the engine together with spit and prayers. He paused, the unspoken hanging heavy in the air, the near misses, the lives balanced on a knife's edge.
They're after the helium-3 mines on the far side of the moon. If they get those, they fuel their fleet indefinitely. We can't let that happen. It's the key to their expansion. She nodded once, decisive and unyielding, the mark of a commander who'd seen too many battles lost to hesitation. Affirmative. Redirecting 2 interceptors to your vector for escort. But intel says the main force is splitting, half pushing for the moon, the rest probing Earth's orbit directly. Your salvage could turn the tide if we reverse engineer it. Get it home, Harlan. Whatever it takes. The line cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence broken only by the thrum of failing systems and the occasional spark from a damaged panel. Jack swiveled to the engineering feed on his secondary screen. Lena, sweat-streaked and focused, welding a bypass around the damaged injector, sparks flying like fireflies. Mira hovered nearby, handing tools without a word, her cautious nature keeping her one step removed from the sparks and heat. We've got company inbound, Jax announced over the ship-wide comm, his voice carrying to every corner of the vessel. Aliens are ours, we push through. Lena, how long till we can jump? We need to link up with those interceptors. Her voice filtered up from the engine room, steady despite the arc of her welder lighting her face in harsh white. 10 minutes if I don't blow us up first. That core sample's emitting interference, it's like it's alive, fighting the seals we jury-rigged around it. Jax's mind raced, visualizing the alien artifact, a jagged crystal pulsing with inner light, sitting in the hold like a captured viper, its surface etched with incomprehensible glyphs. It held the key to their power source, the exotic matter that made their ship so formidable, but containing it was proving as deadly as the fight itself, the energy seeping like radiation. A proximity alert pinged sharply, bogies on sensors closing fast, signatures not human, twisted echoes of the alien design. Battle stations, he ordered, the words tasting like iron on his tongue, summoning the crew to readiness. The ship lurched as he fired thrusters, weaving toward a nearby asteroid cluster for cover, the rocks providing scant but vital concealment. Mira's voice cut in again from her station, shields at 60%, picking up 3 signatures, alien scouts light and nimble designed for harassment. He banked hard, the G-forces pinning him to his seat, the harness digging into his shoulders. A laser from the lead scout grazed the hull, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of sparks that showered the bridge. Return fire. Target their engines, disable, don't destroy if we can. The forward batteries thrummed to life, Jax's aim true from years of sims and real scraps in the border wars. One scout exploded in a silent bloom of fire, its wreckage expanding in a cloud of ionized gas, but the others danced closer, their beams slicing through the void with precision, testing the Vanguard's flanks. Lena's warning klaxon wailed from below. Coolant breach. We're venting plasma, shields dropping fast down to 45. Pain lanced through Jax's side as debris from the hit rattled the bridge, a loose panel clanging against his leg. He slammed the comm. Lena, seal it now. Mira, reroute auxiliary power to shields. Buy us time. In the hold, the crystal hummed louder, its glow seeping through the containment field like light through cracked glass, the interference spiking. Lena paused her work on the engine, staring at it through the viewport, an idea sparking in her eyes. Risky, but maybe their edge in this desperate hour. She grabbed a conduit line from the nearby rack, splicing it directly into the alien tech's casing with careful twists, attempting to siphon its energy to stabilize the ship. The ship bucked under another hit, alarm screaming in protest. Jax dodged, firing wildly from the turrets, clipping a wing off the second scout and sending it spinning away, trailing ions like blood, but the third closed in, weapons hot and locking. Lena, talk to me, he yelled over the roar. Almost? Got it. A surge rocked the deck, lights flickering as power flooded the systems from the illicit tap. The crystal's hum became a roar, feeding the engines with forbidden fuel, the exotic matter boosting output beyond human limits. Shields flared back to full, brighter than before, the barriers shimmering with an unnatural hue. Jax grinned fiercely, yanking the stick to port. The ship surged forward with renewed vigor, ramming the last scout aside like a bully in a bar fight. The impact crumpling its frame. It slammed into an asteroid, detonating in a chain reaction that lit the rocks like fireworks, the explosion's light reflecting off the debris. They cleared the field, the ship humming with unstable power, the crystal's energy coursing through conduits not designed for it. But as Jax watched the scanners clear of immediate threats, a new alert blinked insistently. The crystal's containment was cracking, stress fractures appearing under the strain of the siphon. Jax gripped the controls tighter, his knuckles whitening against the worn leather of the armrests. The familiar grip a small comfort in the escalating crisis. The alert pulsed red on the console, a heartbeat warning that the crystal's energy was bleeding through its fragile shell, the containment field wavering like a soap bubble under pressure. Lena leaned over his shoulder in the cramped bridge, her breath steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead, the scent of her exertion mixing with the ozone. "Containment at 70%, she said, her fingers flying across the auxiliary panel, attempting to reinforce the field with emergency protocols. "If it drops below 50, we're venting plasma into the cabin. Not a great way to end the day, suffocation and exotic fire." He nodded, his eyes flicking to the view screen where the asteroid field's debris still sparkled in the void, remnants of their hard-won victories glinting like jewels in the black. The ship, the Vanguard, cut through space like a knife through silk, but now it shuddered faintly, the crystal's power thrumming unevenly through the hull, sending vibrations that rattled teeth and loosened fittings. They'd scavenged it from that derelict alien wreck after the second kill, pure forbidden energy that had saved their skins back there, turning the tide when all seemed lost. But nothing came free in the black. Every boon carried a curse, and this one hummed with potential catastrophe. "Options?" Jax asked, his voice low and measured, inviting input without panic. Beside him, Marco, the burly engineer with grease-streaked arms and a toolkit always at hand, grunted from the engine bay access hatch below the cockpit, his voice muffled by the bulkhead, but clear in intent. "Flush it," Marco called back, the suggestion blunt. "Or reroute to the auxiliary core. But that crystal's alien tech could fry the whole system if we guess wrong. Cascade through every circuit." Lena shot Jax a look, her cautious nature warring with the fire in her eyes, the internal debate visible in the furrow of her brow. She'd always been the planner, the one who mapped escape vectors before bullets or beams flew, her mind a repository of contingencies. "Reroute's risky, but flushing means we're dead in the water. No shields, no thrust. Those scouts might have friends circling back." The ship lurched as another microfracture spiderwebbed the containment field, visible on the internal cams as cracks glowing with inner light. Alarms wailed briefly before Jack silenced them with a slap of his palm on the override. The noise too distracting for clear thought. He could feel the vibration in his teeth, the crystal protesting like a caged animal clawing at the bars of its prison, the hum rising in pitch. "All right, Lena, walk me through the reroute. Marco, get eyes on the core. If it spikes, you pull the plug. Emergency dump, no hesitation." Marco's head popped up through the hatch, his witty grin flashing through the worry lines etched on his face. A brief spark of levity. "Aye, Captain Optimist. Just don't blame me if we turn into a shooting star, pretty, but terminal." Lena's hands moved with precision, isolating power flows on her holographic display, tracing paths like a surgeon mapping veins. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone, the crystal's hum rising to a whine that set Jax's nerves on edge. A psychological pressure as much as physical. He kept the ship steady, weaving through a sparse cloud of micrometeorites, each ping against the hull a reminder of their vulnerability, the void ever ready to claim the unwary. "Diverting 10%, Lena murmured, her concentration absolute as she initiated the transfer. The console lights dimmed, then brightened abruptly as energy shifted, the ship responding with a subtle surge. The containment held at 68%, better, but the crystal pulsed angrily, veins of light cracking further across its surface in the observation chamber below. Visible on the feed like lightning in a bottle, Jax glanced at the scanner, the display clear of immediate threats. But the alien's mothership signature lingered on the edge of detection. a predatory shadow haunting the periphery. They'd come for Earth's mineral riches, stripping colonies like locusts devouring fields. But humans like Jax, smugglers turned defenders in the crucible of war, had other ideas. This crystal was their ace, a taste of the aliens' own medicine, if they could harness it without self-destruction. A jolt rocked the deck suddenly, the ship bucking like a startled horse. Marco cursed from below, his voice echoing up. Feedback loop. It's fighting the reroute, pushing back like it's alive, rewriting the flow. Stabilize it, Jax barked, banking hard as a rogue ion burst from the failing field grazed the shields, the energy discharge visible as a shimmer outside. Sparks flew from a nearby panel and Lena batted them away with her sleeve. The fabric singeing but her focus unbroken. I'm trying. The Matrix is adapting, it's rewriting our protocols. Interfacing directly. Her voice cracked for the first time, caution giving way to real fear as the implications sank in. The crystal wasn't just power. It was intelligent, or at least reactive in ways that mimicked life. The ship's AI chimed in, its calm tone absurdly out of place amid the turmoil. Warning, anomalous energy signature detected. Containment breach imminent. Recommend immediate isolation. Jax's mind raced through the options, each path branching into disaster. Flush it and they drift helpless, easy prey. Fight it and the ship becomes a bomb, detonating in a blaze that could light up the system. He remembered the wreck they'd found it in. Alien glyphs pulsing with that same light, a warning or a promise etched into the metal. Undecipherable but ominous. Human grit had gotten them this far, scavenging victory from defeat. Maybe ingenuity could push it further, bending the alien tech to their will. Marco cross-linked the crystal to the inertial dampeners. Use them as a buffer. Let the dampeners absorb the excess energy, dissipate the spikes. A pause stretched, then Marco's laugh echoed up from the bay, sharp and defiant, cutting the tension. You're insane, Captain. But yeah, that might work. Dampeners are designed to handle wild vectors. This could ground the feedback. Give me 30 seconds. Lena's eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded, adjusting the flows to support the hack, rerouting auxiliary lines with swift commands. The ship groaned as power surged wildly, the crystals roared, drowning out the engine's familiar hum. The deck vibrating with the clash of incompatible technologies. Jax held course, sweat stinging his eyes, the void outside a blur of stars streaking past. Containment ticked up slowly, 72%. The cracks slowed their spread, the hum steadying into a reluctant purr. The energy finding equilibrium. Marco whooped from below, his voice triumphant. It's holding. Dampeners are eating the spikes like candy. Strain at 60 but stable. Relief washed over Jax like a cool wave, but it was short-lived, the victory tentative. The scanner pinged urgently. Incoming signatures, 5 alien drones vectoring in fast from the mothership's direction, small but deadly, swarming like insects. They're on us, Lena said, strapping in tighter, her face set. 2 minutes out, closing from multiple angles. Jax yanked the stick, the Vanguard responding with a surge from the stabilized crystal, the power boost making it feel alive again. Brighter shields, hotter lasers. The aliens had sought Earth's wealth. Now they'd taste its reckoning. But the dampeners were at 80% strain, redlining on the gauges. One more push and they'd fail, leaving the crew tumbling in zero-G chaos. Jax set his jaw, resolve hardening. No turning back now. The path to Earth demanded they press on, turning peril into purpose. Jax gripped the controls tighter as the Vanguard twisted through the asteroid field's jagged embrace, the rocks looming like ancient sentinels in the viewport, their irregular shapes casting long shadows across the bridge. The 5 drone signatures blinked red on the scanner, closing like wolves on a wounded deer, their paths converging with mechanical inevitability. Each one was a sleek predator, half the size of their ship but packing enough firepower to shred hull plating in seconds. Their designs optimized for speed and strike in the cluttered confines of the belt. Marco, reroute auxiliary power to the forward turrets. Jax barked, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow, tracing rivulets down his temple. Lena, keep those dampeners from flatlining. We're not going down without a fight. Not after all this. Marco's fingers flew over the console below the cockpit, his wiry frame hunched in concentration, tools clinking as he adjusted relays. On it, boss. But if those spikes hit again from the crystal, we're toast. Power grid's fragile. The first drone broke through the debris curtain, its energy lance lancing out in a blue streak that lit the void, the beam cutting a path toward the Vanguard's bridge. Jax rolled the ship hard, the barrel roll slamming the crew against their harnesses, the G-forces a brutal reminder of the hull's wounds. The beam scorched past, vaporizing a chunk of rock that exploded into glittering shards against the viewport, the impacts pinging like bullets. "Got eyes on 2 more flanking us," Lena called from her station, her cautious nature sharpening into focus as she adjusted the shields, diverting energy to the vulnerable starboard side where the earlier hit had weakened plating. "They're coordinating, trying to box us in, cut off escape vectors." Jax's mind raced, scenarios unfolding like a tactical sim gone wrong. The aliens had stripped Earth's mines for rare crystals like the one they now carried, leaving scarred craters and ghost towns in their wake, colonies abandoned to the cold. Now with one of those crystals jury-rigged into their scavenged systems, humanity's ragtag crew was hitting back, turning scavenged tech against its makers. But 5 against 1? The odds sucked, a brutal arithmetic of survival. He punched the thrusters, slingshotting around a massive boulder that filled the screen, the maneuver buying seconds as the rock's gravity tugged at their path. The drones adapted almost instantly, their formations tightening, AI predicting the curve. A second lance grazed the shields, alarms wailing as containment on the crystal dipped to 75%. The feedback loop threatening to reignite. "Shields at 60, Lena shouted, her voice rising with the urgency, hands blurring across consoles to balance the load. "We can't take another hit like that. Crystals reacting to the energy draw." Marco cursed under his breath, the words muffled but fervent. "Turret's hot, but the targeting's glitchy with all this interference from the field and the crystal. I need a clear shot, something stationary." Jax scanned the field ahead, his eyes picking out a narrow chasm between 2 tumbling asteroids, a gap too tight for the drone's agility. Maybe, but risky as hell for the Vanguard's bulk. A human play born of desperation and that stubborn grit that had kept colonies alive against the void's indifference. "Strap in tight," he said, yanking the stick toward the gap. "We're threading the needle, full burn on my mark." Lena nodded, her face etching with brave lines as she grabbed a portable torch to weld a quick patch on a flickering panel, the acrid smell of melting alloy filling the cabin. "Mark away. Just don't turn us into confetti. I've got enough repairs queued." Engines roared to life, propelling them into the chasm's maw, the walls rushing by in a blur of craggy gray, close enough to scrape sparks from the hull. The proximity alarms chirping warnings. One drone pursued too eagerly, clipping a protruding spur of rock and spinning wildly, erupting in a fireball that lit the crevice like a flare, the explosion's light reflecting off the walls. "Ah, one down," Marco whooped, his wit cutting through the tension like a knife, a brief morale boost. "But the others are peeling off, circling wide now, adapting to the terrain." Lena's screens flickered with new data. "They're signaling something. Wait, incoming from the mothership. Reinforcements?" The scanner lit up with 3 more signatures, larger this time. Interceptors built for pursuit, their profiles heavier and more armored. Jax's stomach nodded, the situation escalating. The crystal's hum faltered, a warning pulse vibrating through the deck, strain at 85%. One wrong move and the whole core would overload, turning them into a brief supernova, a footnote in the war. No backing down. Earth's reckoning wasn't just words. It was this, pushing limits, turning scraps into salvation. He banked hard, lining up the turrets on the nearest drone. "Fire when ready, Marco. Let's even the score. Aim for the joints." Marco's fingers danced over the controls, the turrets whining to life with a high-pitched keen. Bolts of plasma streaked from the hull, slamming into the lead interceptor with pinpoint accuracy. It erupted in a silent bloom of fire, debris scattering like confetti across the void, the wreckage adding to the field's hazards. "Gotcha," Marco said, grinning through gritted teeth, the satisfaction evident. "That's 2. But the remaining pair twisted away with graceful evasion, their hulls shimmering with adaptive shields that absorbed and redirected the energy. Lena's voice cut in, sharp as a knife. "They're locking on, evasive, Jax, now." Jax yanked the yoke, the ship groaning under the strain of the turn, metal protesting. Stars blurred past the viewport as they spiraled, the crystal's hum rising to a fever pitch, the power unstable but potent, 90% strain on the dampeners. The deck plates vibrated, loose panels rattling like bones in a grave, threatening to come adrift. "Shields at 40, Lena reported, her hands flying across consoles, Sweat beaded on her forehead and lit by the glow of failing readouts. The bridge a cockpit of controlled panic. The first interceptor closed in relentlessly, its weapons ports glowing crimson with charged fury. Jax's mind raced. Standard maneuvers wouldn't cut it against these adaptive foes. They learned from every dodge, every feint, their algorithms evolving mid-battle. He spotted the faint glow of the mothership in the distance, a hulking shadow against the asteroid field's edge, its massive form a harbinger. Reinforcements? Or a trap to lure them in? Marco, target their engines, hit 'em low, disrupt propulsion. Jax ordered, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut twisting tighter. On it. Marco adjusted the targeting, firing a spread of shots that clipped the pursuer's flank, sparks flying from the impact as armor buckled. The alien craft stabilized quickly, retaliating with a barrage that rocked the ship, the impacts shuddering through the frame like hammer blows. Alarms blared, red lights flooding the cockpit in a wash of crimson. Lena cursed, patching a hull breach with remote commands, sealing it before atmosphere could escape. Power surge in the core, it's spiking. If we push the engines harder, we risk meltdown, the crystal feeding back into itself. Jax glanced at her, seeing the fear she tried to hide behind her focus. The cautious engineer pushed to her limits. Lena, always the one who planned every variable, every contingency in the Sims. But out here plans were ash in the wind of battle. He remembered the briefing back on Earth. The Admiral's voice grave. The aliens had come for the rare Earth minerals, stripping colonies bare, but humanity's real weapon was grit, the refusal to fold, to yield the stars they'd claimed. No time for memories. The fight demanded presence. The second interceptor flanked them suddenly, firing a disruptor beam that fried their port thrusters in a cascade of shorts, the ship lurching wildly and spinning toward a jagged asteroid looming large. "Hold on!" Jax bellowed, firing reverse bursts from the mains to arrest the spin, the engines straining. They skimmed the rock's surface, close enough to see the craters etched like scars from eons of impacts, the hull heating from proximity. Marco whooped as he nailed the flanking ship with a lucky shot, sending it tumbling into the asteroid in a crunch of metal and silence. The collision a soundless demolition. One left now, the odds shifting slightly. The final interceptor dove straight at them, undeterred, its trajectory aggressive. Lena's screens pinged with new data. It's charging a ram. Wait, no. It's deploying something. Nanoswarms? Tiny glints detached from the enemy hull, a glittering cloud racing toward them like a storm of locusts. Jax's blood ran cold. Those would eat through the shields in seconds, straight to the crystal core, devouring everything in corrosive swarms. Options? He snapped, buying time with erratic jinks, the ship dancing to evade the cloud. Marco leaned forward from his station. We vent the cargo bay, use the debris field as chaff. It'll mask us, draw the swarm off. Lena shook her head, doubt clear. That exposes the core. Too risky. The containment's already fragile. The swarm closed in, a glittering storm promising oblivion. Jax made the call decisive. Do it, Marco, prep the vents. Lena, reroute power to the fields, make it look like we're dead in the water, systems failing. They moved like a single unit. Years of sims and shared scraps paying off in seamless coordination. Vents hissed open, spewing scrap and dust into the void, a decoy cloud blooming. The ship went dark, engines cutting to a whisper, life signs masked. Jax held his breath, watching the swarm veer toward the decoy cloud, devouring it instead in a frenzy of dissolution. The interceptor overshot, confused by the false readings, its sensors overwhelmed. Jax ignited the engines in a burst, swinging around to ram its rear with the Vanguard's bulk. Marco's turrets fired point-blank, shredding the drive core in a hail of plasma. It exploded in a contained flash, the shockwave buffeting them like a gale. But they rode it out. Safe for now. But the crystal's hum didn't settle, holding at 95%, the strain evident. Lena wiped her brow with a shaky hand. We're leaking energy. That swarm nicked us deeper than scans show. We need to dock soon or we're done. The outpost's our best shot. Jax nodded, plotting a course toward the faint signal of their nearest outpost, a fortified mining station on the belt's fringe. The mothership loomed larger on long range, a reminder that this was just the opening salvo in a larger war. Earth's reckoning demanded more than survival. It demanded they hit back, deliver the crystal and turn the tide. As they accelerated, Jax felt the weight of it all. The crew's trust in him, the fragile hope humming in the core like a heartbeat. No surrender. Not today, not ever. Jax gripped the controls tighter as the outpost's silhouette sharpened against the asteroid field's jagged sprawl, the station's modular arms extending like weary limbs into the void, lights flickering from recent damage. The crystal's hum vibrated through the deck, a relentless pulse that set his teeth on edge, the energy leak worsening with every passing minute. 95% containment, but the readings flickered red on the console, siphoning power like blood from a wound, the ship's systems laboring under the burden. "Marco, status on the turrets?" Jax barked, his eyes locked on the scanner, where blips multiplied ahead. Not just debris, but automated drones peeling off the mothership's flank, vectoring toward them with predatory precision, their small forms swarming like a hive unleashed. "Two operational, but ammo's down to 30%, Marco replied from the gunner's station, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead, dripping onto the controls. He swiveled in his chair, fingers dancing over the targeting array, prioritizing threats. "Those bastards are swarming fast. If they pin us against the rocks, we're scrap. Easy pickings for the big one." Lena leaned over the engineering panel, her cautious nature yielding to urgent calculations as she monitored the crystal's output, hands blurring across the interfaces to stem the leak. Aft manifolds the source. Alien tech must have scored it deeper than we thought during that swarm hit. I can patch it with the spare plating from stores, but it'll take 10 minutes we don't have. Jax, buy me time, keep them off our tail. The first drone streaked into view on the main screen. A sleek obsidian dart firing micromissiles that lit the void in staccato bursts, trails of exhaust glowing briefly before fading. Jax yanked the ship into a barrel roll, the G-forces slamming them against their harnesses, the world spinning in a disorienting whirl. Alarms wailed as a missile grazed the hull, shearing off a sensor array in a spray of sparks that showered the bridge, the acrid smell of burnt wiring intensifying. "Got it," Marco shouted, his turrets barking in response. Plasma bolts lancing out to core the lead drone in a bloom of ionized gas, the wreckage expanding in a brief nebula. Debris pinged off the viewport like lethal hail, each impact a jolt, but 3 more closed in, weaving through the asteroids with unnatural agility, their sensors painting the human ship in targeting locks that lit up the tactical display. Jax's mind raced, the weight of the crew's reliance pressing like the crystal's thrum, a constant undercurrent. Earth's outposts were all that stood between the alien harvest fleets and the homeworld's core worlds. Lose this one, with its stockpiles of refined iridium and helium-3, and the reckoning turned to rout, the invaders fueling endless assaults. He spotted a narrow chasm in the field ahead, a gamble born of grit and necessity, the gap a potential bottleneck. "Lena, seal what you can on that patch. Marco, cover the flanks, pick off the wingman. We're threading the needle. Full burn on my mark." She nodded, brave lines etching her face as she ignited the portable torch, welding the patch with focused intensity, the acrid smell of melting alloy filling the cabin and stinging eyes. "Mark away. Just don't turn us into confetti. I've got enough shrapnel to sort." Engines roared to life, propelling them into the chasm's maw, the walls of gray crag rushing by in a claustrophobic blur, close enough that the hull scraped sparks. Proximity sensors screaming. Drones pursued, one clipping an asteroid protrusion and exploding in a chain reaction that lit the passage like a fuse. The blast wave buffeting the rear, Marco picked off another with precise shots, his curses witty and punctuating each hit like exclamation points. "Eat that, you oversized bugs. That's for the coolant breach." But the third drone anticipated their path, dropping low to block the exit, its barrage unleashing missiles that curved around the bends with eerie intelligence, guided by onboard AI. One struck true, buckling the rear thruster in a plume of venting gas, the ship shuddering and spinning wildly as systems screamed overload, red lights flooding everything. "Thrust at 40%, Jax yelled, fighting the stick with raw muscle, his arms burning from the effort. The crystal's hum spiked to 97%, energy bleeding into the breach and fueling the chaos, the power unstable. Lena abandoned her patch mid-weld, scrambling to the core chamber access via a maintenance ladder. "It's destabilizing. If it breaches now, we're a mini-nova, lighting up the belt for the mothership to see." Marco fired everything remaining in the turrets, shredding the drone's wing, but not before it rammed the hull in a final act of defiance, metal groaning as a section of outer plating tore free, exposing inner compartments to the vacuum's edge. They burst from the chasm, tumbling toward the outpost's docking arms, but the damage was done. The ship listed to port, power fading in flickers. Jax coaxed the last dregs of thrust from the engines, aligning with the berth through sheer will. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic clang, locking them in with a reassuring solidity. The airlock cycling as atmosphere equalized. But as the inner door hissed open, the scanner pinged ominously. The mothership's main guns were charging, its massive shadow eclipsing the stars, a behemoth descending. Lena emerged from the core chamber, her face smudged with grime and sweat, toolkit slung over her shoulder. Patch held barely. Crystals at 89 now stabilized for the moment. We made it, but the outpost's defenses are offline. That swarm must have hit them first, crippled the turrets. Marco slung his own toolkit over his shoulder, his eyes hardening with resolve. Then we fixed that too. No running from this fight. It's here and we're the ones standing. Jack stood, the crew's resolve mirroring his own, a silent pact forged in fire. The aliens had come for Earth's riches, the minerals that powered dreams of expansion. They'd found humans who built reckonings from wreckage, turning defense into defiance. As klaxons blared from the outpost corridors echoing the alarm, he led them out, pulse rifle in hand, the weight familiar and reassuring. No surrender. The line held. Jax gripped the pulse rifle tighter as the airlock hissed open, spilling them into the outpost's dim corridor, the harsh overheads flickering like dying stars. Emergency lights painted the walls in stuttering red, casting elongated shadows that danced with each pulse, and the acrid tang of scorched wiring hung heavy in the air, a testament to recent violence. Alien drones buzzed like angry hornets at the far end of the passage, their chitinous forms skittering across the grated floor, multi-jointed legs probing for heat signatures with mechanical precision, sensors glowing in the low light. "Flank left," Jax barked, his voice low but steady, carrying the authority of command. "Lena, cover the junction. Marco, on me for the generator room. We restore power or this place falls." Lena nodded without hesitation, her engineering multi-tool already humming in her hand as she peeled off toward a side vent, slipping into position with the grace of experience. Sweat beaded on her forehead from the heat of the damaged station, but her eyes burned with that unyielding focus Jax had come to rely on, the quiet determination that turned chaos into order. Marco fell in step beside him, his toolkit clanking softly against his thigh with each stride, his usual wry grin replaced by a grim set to his jaw, the banter silenced by the gravity of the moment. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with conduits and access panels, some sparking from severed lines. The first drone rounded the corner with a mechanical whine, its sensor array glowing like malevolent eyes in the gloom, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Jax fired from the hip, a sharp crack of energy from the pulse rifle that vaporized its forelegs in a flash of blue, the creature crumpling to the deck in a sparking heap. But two more surged forward from the shadows, claws scraping sparks from the metal deck as they charged. "Suppressing," Marco shouted, unleashing a burst from his sidearm. The bolt sizzling past Jax's ear close enough to singe hair, clipping one drone's wing and sending it tumbling into the wall with a crunch. The other leaped with surprising agility, mandibles clacking as it aimed for Jax's throat, its bulk airborne. He sidestepped at the last instant, slamming the rifle's stock into its underbelly with a force that reverberated up his arms. The impact solid. The thing shattered against the wall in a spray of iridescent fluid, viscous and glowing faintly, the remnants twitching. "Keep moving, 50 meters to the core," Jax urged, his breath coming in controlled bursts. They sprinted, boots pounding in rhythm with the distant thunder of the mothership's guns shaking the station, vibrations rumbling through the floor like an earthquake in slow motion. Alarms wailed overhead, overlapping with the chatter of Lena's voice over the comms, her tone clipped. "Junction clear, but I've got movement in the vents. They're adapting, jamming our signals, cutting short-range comms." Jax cursed under his breath, keying his mic with a gloved thumb. "Hold position. We're almost there. Don't let them flank you." The generator room door loomed ahead, half ajar and framed by blackened conduits that smoked lazily, the air thick with the smell of burnt insulation. Smoke curled from a ruptured panel, and the hum of failing power cells was a dying heartbeat, erratic and weak. Marco shouldered past, prying the door wider with a crowbar from his kit, the metal groaning in protest. "This is bad." Overload fried the relays. "Defenses are dark for good unless we reroute the backups. Turrets, shields all offline." Jack scanned the room, rifle sweeping shadows methodically, the beam cutting through the haze. No drones yet, but the silence felt like a trap, the calm before the swarm. How long to fix? 10 minutes if we're lucky. No guarantees with the interference. Marco dropped to his knees, yanking open an access grate with a screech. Wires spilled out like entrails, some severed and dangling, others pulsing with erratic energy, sparks jumping. His hands moved with practiced speed, splicing and stripping connections, but a spark jumped, singeing his glove and drawing a wince. He didn't stop, jaw set. These bastards knew exactly what to hit. Targeted the power grid like they had blueprints. From the corridor behind, a new sound rose. A low, vibrating drone that set Jax's teeth on edge, building like a storm. He pivoted smoothly, spotting the swarm filtering through the vents. Not the small scouts, but heavier assault units, their shells reinforced with scavenged outpost plating, making them tankier, deadlier. Lena's voice crackled over the comm, distorted but urgent. Incoming, 3 big ones. I can slow 'em with a vent trap, but... The line cut to static, the jam asserting itself. Jax's heart slammed against his ribs, adrenaline surging. Lena! No response, only the screech of claws on metal. He fired into the vents, blue bolts illuminating the writhing mass in staccato flashes, vaporizing segments but not stemming the flow. They kept coming, undeterred, adaptive. Jax, help me finish this. Marco grunted from the floor, sweat dripping onto the exposed circuits, his focus unbroken. One good surge and we can hotwire the turrets back online. Defenses live. The first assault drone breached the door, its bulk filling the frame like a nightmare made metal, claws extended like scythes. Hydraulic hiss accompanying its charge. Jax rolled aside, the floor buckling under its weight, deck plates denting. He came up firing, shots pitting its armor but not penetrating the reinforced shell, ricocheting harmlessly. It swung a limb, catching his rifle and sending it skittering across the room, clattering into shadows. Barehanded now, Jax grabbed a loose conduit from the floor, swinging it like a bat with desperate force. The metal connected with a clang, denting the drone's sensor dome, sparks flying as it staggered, optics flickering. But it retaliated with a swipe that gashed his arm, pain flaring hot and immediate, blood slicking his sleeve and dripping onto the deck. Marco glanced up, eyes widening in alarm. Jax, behind you. Another drone piled in through the door, pinning Jax against the wall with inexorable force, its bulk crushing. Mandibles inched toward his neck, breath hot with ozone from internal systems. He twisted, driving his elbow into a joint with a crack, but it held fast, servos whining. Then Lena burst through the side door, face streaked with grime from her fight, a makeshift grenade in her fist, cobbled from outpost charges and her multi-tools power cell, wires exposed and humming. Eat this, she snarled, hurling it underhand into the fray. The explosion rocked the room, a bloom of fire and shrapnel that shredded the drone's undersides, chitin and metal flying. The one on Jax collapsed in twitching pieces, freeing him with a gasp. He clutched his arm, blood warm, but pushed to his feet as the third drone recoiled from the blast, damaged but raging. Together they converged, Lena snatching up Jax's rifle and laying down cover fire, bolts sizzling, while Marco slammed the final connection home with a triumphant grunt. The generator groaned, then roared to life, lights snapping on overhead in a flood of white, systems humming anew. Turrets whirred to activation in the corridors beyond, automated guns swiveling toward the swarm with lethal intent, plasma searing the air. Screeches echoed as drones met their end, the tide turning, but the mothership's shadow deepened outside, a beam lancing down to probe the outpost's hull, etching scars into the armor. Jax met Lena's gaze, then Marco's, the three of them breathing hard amid the smoke and debris. They'd bought time, but the real assault was just beginning, the behemoth committing fully. Wounds would heal. Resolve wouldn't break. The fight continued. Jax wiped the blood from his brow with the back of his hand, the metallic tang mixing with the acrid smoke curling from the generator vents, the air thick and choking. The turrets chattered outside the room, their plasma bolts carving through the drone swarm like scythes through wheat. The distant screeches fading as the automated defenses asserted dominance, but the mothership's beam pulsed brighter, a hungry lance etching deeper scars into the outpost's reinforced hull, the station shuddering under the assault. Alarms wailed across the control room, red strobe lights painting Lena's face in jagged shadows as she patched into the comms array, attempting to restore long-range links. Perimeters holding for now. Marco grunted, slamming a fresh power cell into his console with a click. His hands steady despite the gash across his knuckles from the earlier fight, blood crusting. His fingers flew over the keys, rerouting what remained of the grid, but that beam's targeting the core directly. If it breaches, we're venting atmosphere. Whole sections exposed to vacuum. Lena nodded, her voice clipped over the din of systems rebooting. Reroute auxiliary shields to the lower decks. Buy time for the generators to spin up. Jax, get to the armory, grab the EMP grenades. We can't let them board. If they reach the crystal stores, it's over. He didn't argue, just shouldered his recovered rifle and bolted for the corridor, boots pounding against the grated floor. The vibrations from the beam impacts jolting through his legs. The outpost shuddered again, a deep groan vibrating through the metal as the beam intensified. Probing for weaknesses like a surgeon's scalpel, sparks showered from a ceiling panel as he passed, singeing his sleeve and filling the air with fresh ozone. But he pressed on. The pain in his arm, a dull roar he ignored. Adrenaline numbing it. Resolve, he thought. It's all we've got left, the unyielding core that defined them. In the armory, crates lay toppled from earlier blasts, their contents spilling like guts from a wound. Weapons, ammo clips, emergency kits scattered. Jax rifled through the debris with urgent hands, fingers closing around a cluster of sleek orbs, their casings cool and heavy. EMP grenades designed to fry electronics in a pulse. 3, enough for a gamble maybe, to disrupt a boarding wave. He clipped them to his belt and sprinted back, the ship outpost lurching sideways as another impact rattled the bulkheads, dust sifting from joints. "They're cutting through!" Marco's shout crackled over the intercom, static-laced. Hull integrity at 60%, breaches forming on decks 4 and 5. Jax burst into the control room, tossing the grenades to Lena in a smooth arc. She caught them one-handed, her cautious eyes flashing with that familiar grit, the spark that turned fear to fight. Plan? Simple, Jax said, checking his rifle's charge with a diagnostic ping, the weapon humming ready. We take the fight to them. Hit the docking port before they force entry, ambush and repel. Marco spun in his chair, brow furrowed in concern. That's suicide. The swarm's still out there and that beam's carving a path. Better than waiting to suffocate in the dark. Lena hefted the grenades, her witty edge cutting through the tension like a lifeline. Besides, we've danced this close to death before. One more step, together. The 3 of them moved as one, sealing the control room behind them with a heavy vault door and racing toward the lower decks, pulse rifles at the ready. The corridors twisted under emergency lighting, steam hissing from ruptured pipes along the walls, the air thick with the ozone bite of failing systems and the metallic undernote of fear sweat. Distant screeches filtered through the vents, drones probing for weak points, their chitinous forms scraping like nails on steel, the sound grating on nerves. At the docking port, the beam's glow seeped through widening fissures in the airlock door, illuminating a nightmarish silhouette. A larger alien form, not a mere drone, but something hulking, its exoskeleton iridescent under the strain of the energy, tentacles writhing. It clawed at the seams, mandibles clicking in mechanical fury, forcing the breach wider. Jax primed the first grenade, thumb hovering over the trigger, the device humming in his palm. On my mark, flank and toss. Hit the joints, disrupt the borders. Lena and Marco nodded, splitting left and right, their breath sinking in the confined space, a rhythm of unity. The door buckled inward with a screech of tearing metal, the alien's arm punching through, tentacles whipping for purchase on the inner frame. Now! The grenade sailed true, embedding in the breach before detonating in a silent blue bloom of electromagnetic fury, the pulse rippling outward. The alien convulsed, its systems frying in overload, limbs jerking spasmodically, but the mothership's beam didn't waver. Instead, it widened, sucking debris and air into the void with inexorable pull. Decompression alarms blared as the outpost tilted, gravity faltering in sections, loose items floating. Jax grabbed a handhold, hauling Lena back from the edge where the vacuum clawed, her fingers brushing his in a grip that said everything. Trust, survival, unbreakable bond. Marco anchored himself to a console, rerouting what power he could to the emergency seals, bulkheads grinding shut, but the hull tore wider under the assault.